Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And today, that person who matters is Stefanie Meyer, who I met, oh my goodness, Stephanie, I don't know, a couple years ago, but it could have been a week ago. I don't know. Time just is weird. And we had a conversation kind of about transition and what you were doing at the time, and you reached out again and said, I think I landed, and we're going to do an interview about the process of how you got where you are. So before we start, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. So Stefanie Meyer is a health and prevention of chronic disease professional who has more than 15 years of experience in this area. She completed her PhD in exercise science and nutrition from North Dakota State. And from there, she has a combination of experience in board leadership in North Dakota on school boards and lots of experience in higher ed with students. Recently, Stephanie became the wellness director and instructor at Concordia, my alma mater. By the way, you went to NDSU, so that's okay. We're still friends. But and that's a new position, by the way, right? For
Correct. Yeah,
them.
new
Yeah.
new revision of things for Concordia as well as for me. So lots of opportunity there, which is exciting.
Right. So now, in addition to that, she's also created her own organizational systems change consulting called Sustainably Well. So welcome, Stephanie.
Perfect. Thank you, Jody. Yeah, and I think we met pre-COVID, which feels it doesn't feel as long as that, but it was. It was kind of like this conversation before, as the world thinks of itself now, I feel like as pre-COVID and
I
post-COVID
do too.
life.
I do
Yeah.
too. I know. Man, really? That's so bizarre because I am telling you, I have no concept of time these days. It's so weird. So, yay. But I'm glad to have seen you land. I'm gonna say land. I don't think any of us are ever done. So it's not like I don't think we ever figure it all out and everything's like I think there's a process to everything. But where you are now compared to where you were when we first met feels different to me.
Yeah. Feels different to me too, which is it's good. Feels really good to kind of I like how you say that land. Land in a space that feels like it's authentic. When we
Mm.
talked when we first met, face to face, you asked some really good questions and I was always trying to kind of decide what is my next step, but I was forcing it. I wasn't really thinking about naturally where my next step was going to be. So that was a great kind of moment, really, to look back on and go, this I was trying to push to what the next thing in society for my degree path was. And it just didn't feel like that's where I wanted to be.
Hmm.
So I needed to
Well,
take some time. Yeah.
I know, and isn't that the way it is in many cases? I think we do that to our kids. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then you go to college and you're supposed to know when you're 18. How? It's,
Right?
well, and you have a PhD. So, I mean, I guess you kind of have to decide when you're going that route and you're that committed to something. Did you feel unsure when you were going through that program?
Yeah, I love this question because when I started, so I had two kids at the time when I started the PhD program. I have three kids now.
Okay.
And kind of going through this, I kind of always thought in the back of my head, some mentors of mine have kind of said, I think maybe the PhD is in your future. And I kept telling them no, because I didn't fit the traditional mold of what I thought people with PhDs did.
Hmm.
And then, I kind of eventually got to that point and I thought, I really want to know all there is to know about how to stay well, how to keep the body and the mind really, really feeling good and doing well, both physically, mentally, inside and out. So that meant PhD. But then I still, and people would be like, well, why do you want to do that? They were just really kind of perplexed. Like, why would you want to go to back to school and do more schooling? And I really wanted to be how I define it as an expert of health. I didn't want to be an MD. I didn't want to be a doctor of medicine. I wanted to be that person that knew as much as I could possibly find about about health.
Hmm.
And that really drove me to then continue on to where I'm at now about knowing as much as I can about helping people be well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a different way of thinking of it when, I mean, it makes sense when you say it like that, but I think we're in the business of making, I shouldn't say it like that, but making money off people being sick.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
then it's not about prevention and it's not about wellness necessarily. It's about reactivity to whatever has gotten people sick.
Right, right, right. And I started in undergrad as pre-physical therapy. And that was my first exposure to the healthcare system. And the physical therapy field is amazing. There's wonderful people in that field. And when I shadowed, I kind of went, everyone here is in a lot of pain. They're really
Mm,
not, they don't really want to be here doing their therapy because it's really uncomfortable. And I thought, I don't know if this is where I belong.
mm,
Myself, again, lots of friends who continued on in that pathway, very happy with where they're
mhm,
at, but it didn't fit for me. I
right.
wanted to really be able to influence people on the other side of that health spectrum and not so much on the sick end of the spectrum.
That's such a great distinction. And I, I wouldn't think of that because I'm not in that field. I wouldn't think of people only seeking out your service when they are in pain or when they are, not in a great state of mind. And that would be what they would do, wouldn't it?
Right, right. And usually they're told they have to be there.
Sure, sure.
Just different. For me, it didn't land like I thought it was going to. So that was
Yeah.
interesting.
But you wouldn't have probably known that until you'd gotten into it.
Right.
Is that
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I knew I was always an athlete. As I recall, you're an athlete as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it really shaped, I thought everyone actually loved exercising. So
Ah.
that was my first kind of aha moment when I got to college and people were like, this is not fun for me. I don't like to be in this uncomfortable kind of place where I thought it was the best place to be, to being active and in sport. So that was one of my first moments of going, okay, well, if not everyone loves this, then I wonder what else I need to learn
Mm,
about kind of the bigger picture. And so it did. I took some classes, did some experiences, and then landed more on the exercise science, well, fully in the exercise science side of things, instead of more in the medical school, though I loved learning about how the body works.
mm,
Just wanted to keep it healthy and I didn't want to treat it all the time.
yeah. You know what you're reminding me of? The work I do is with corporate cultures. So if we think about corporation, the word corporation or corporate comes from the root corpus, which is all about the body, the structure. And what you're talking about is keeping the structure healthy. And you're also, in my observation, you're also recognizing that if only the structure is what we're talking about, we're missing the what I like to call the heart and soul and spirit of the corpus. And so combining, because it sounds like you're talking about combining the mindset of wanting to be there with the result, which would be a healthy body, mind, and spirit, probably.
Yeah, sure. And uh, putting it in that frame is a nice visual, I think, for me too to look at on in what I'm teaching now, which is new for me. This type of curriculum, I've taken the shell and I've had the opportunity to develop it into what I think it should look like for students. And it's amazing to me to start to get students to see that their mind, spirit, and body are all connected. And they all interact. And you, even though we can maybe try to compartmentalize and focus sometimes on one part or the other, there's so much overlap that we really have to think about it holistically and which kind of led to the naming of my consulting arm, which is sustainably well
Mhm.
because again, so many times, sometimes I have a little bit of aversion to the word coach because they tend to really then kind of tell you everything that you're doing wrong and then how you can do it right. Well, and in my experience, it's not always been sustainable for people. So I've really kind of wrestled with that as I was kind of going through this process to think about how you can't take parts of your body, mind, and soul apart from one another for very long and have it
Yeah.
work.
I love that. And it goes back to what you said about people wanting to be there. They're prescribed physical therapy, or you have to do this as a part of your exercise routine. And that is an aha. If we in whatever we do, listeners, whatever you do, if you believe that the way you see the world is the way everyone sees the world, we're missing out on so much opportunity because my perspective is only one little slice of the world. And what you're probably learning in this process, when you thought everybody should want to be healthy or want to know about the body, or if they're an athlete, of course they would want to do this. That's been some ahas I've had in my own life about corporate culture, and even about me. I mean, I think everybody should know that I'm doing this class because I've told you once, and everybody listens and retains the way I do. No. It's been kind of an aha for me too.
Yeah, yeah. And to be able to allow yourself and encourage yourself and those listening on to take the time to
Mm.
think about that perspective. I love that. I love that's why I love working with students so much. And now as they start to work with clients and organizations in different ways, and not corporate culture ways, but in specific health related ways. What does that look like for them? Because every group, however big they are, has their own either direction they're trying to get to, but they have their own um, culture, for lack of a better word, right now
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
matters to them and it matters to those around them.
Well, and I think unless they know better, they can't possibly do better. So part of what you teach, I would bet, as you're an instructor of students who have picked this as a major or as a course that they choose to take, it seems to me that having an open student is a lot easier to pour information into than someone who's there resistant because they're resisting it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes the resistance ones can be fun if you go, can see the opportunity, but you're right. It is kind of when you're ready for to take in an opportunity, when you're ready to think about things differently, it makes a huge difference. And when I do work with people, whether it's one-on-one or smaller groups, kind of organizationally, knowing where they're at and their readiness for
Mm,
change. So this is maybe a little bit health talk, health theory speak right now, but maybe you've heard of this. But your readiness to change matters more than what I could tell you.
mm,
So once I know where you're at as an individual or where your group of people are at with whatever the topic is we're working on related to kind of health systems, well-being, like healthcare systems, for example, it's so much easier than to know what to do next. I
mm,
know what information they're ready to consume or what information they're not ready for. Because, like you said, many times we come to a place, at least, I have the PhD, I've done all the degrees, right? And so I have all the information. And oftentimes, what can happen is those of us who have this are experts, and we desperately want to share all of our expert knowledge with everyone we can at all times. And if people aren't ready to take it in, you can really sometimes push people away.
Oh, you know what? That reminds me of that story about the person who's in the desert and they're very thirsty and you have a fire hose. Here, I have it. I can save you. And it's pushing them away because it's just too much to take in all at one time.
Absolutely.
And I can completely relate to that. Seeing an outcome or seeing a vision of something that's in my mind I've already worked on. And can't you see it too? That can be frustrating at times for a coach or an instructor, I would bet.
Absolutely.
So then I love how you're taking this from information, inform, and because I think your frustration earlier was, I have all of this and I need to figure out how to get it, how to impact the world with it, right? And now you're recognizing that there's this readiness piece that is not wrong or right. It's just that people can't hear your message if they don't have ears to hear it.
Right. Absolutely. And I didn't know my platform,
Mm,
and oftentimes I'll just speak for myself and my pathway through the PhD. You have these doubts in the back of your mind. am I really the expert? Is this really where I'm supposed to be? Even after you complete it, the challenges of completing something large, whether it's a degree or, a certification or whatever it might be in your area, you still kind of end and then go, well, so now, no, I finished it. Does that just mean I've got it all figured out? And then you kind of have this moment of now what? Now what do
Mm,
I do? And it with a PhD program type thing, they really kind of line you up for academics, which
yeah.
I'm still in academics. I've been in alignment with academics, but I've also kind of had this lifelong aversion to business with no real reason for it. And so kept pushing it away, kept pushing it away. Like, I'm going to stay out of, I didn't take any classes in the College of Business. I stayed away from it. I didn't understand it. I didn't want to understand it. I don't know what all of the reasons why I stayed away from it. And so then having people kind of come to me over these last probably 15 years and say, have you ever thought about your own thing? Have you ever thought about? So people, don't underestimate the power of kind of outside perspective on what your skills might be. So that it took me some time to hear those people because I had kept I had closed that door without even giving it a chance.
Yeah.
So once I allowed again some close friends and mentors to really help influence me from a really good, authentic place, then I started to think about it in reality. What would it actually look like if I were to do something on my own? And it doesn't look like anything else. It's not a health coach. I'm not a life coach. And there's those terms are out there. And so I was struggling with I could tell you what I'm not, but I
Mhm.
couldn't tell you what I am until really more recently.
That's, but that's life right there. What you just described. I can tell you what I'm not. I think because we as little kids are told 100 times, don't do that. We're not taught do that instead. It's just easier and quicker. Don't cross the street. Don't touch the stove. That's how we're programmed. No is what is in our mind way more than yes. And so it's no surprise that we are clear what we don't want, but then after you've taken out all of that, not that, then what's left is this gaping hole. Well, then what? And you described something that I've heard people call the imposter syndrome. I should know all this stuff now, right? I've got all the information in form. I should be an expert. And there's so much shoulddiness. We're so shouldy. We should on ourselves so much. And what you're exploring right now, because you are living it, I think, is sharing your lived experience with people in a way that has them uh, open their ears a little more, maybe. The students, it's probably a really good opportunity for you to work with students so that you as an instructor or a provider of great information, become more aware of how people hear things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love how you would connect that back and describe it with those students. So I work with for mostly first year students. So freshmen, 18, 19-year-olds, the first time they're away from whatever home,
Mhm.
looks like. And it's been an amazing experience to learn from them
Mhm.
and to develop this kind of thing for them, but also with them to kind of go, what do they need to know? What are they ready to learn? And then pushing them a little bit as
Mhm.
well to go, yeah, you are ready to think about big stuff and important things that are shaping who you are. And also, you don't have to have it figured out right now. It's
Yeah.
okay, because it's such a process. And in my experience now, transitioning from the field of academic field of public health into now I'm teaching in the core curriculum where all students get to
Mhm.
interact with content, which is wonderful. I get to also think about what is your purpose?
Mhm.
Who, at Concordia and their mission, it's very different than a land grant. So I'm learning about that and I'm really enjoying this whole idea of following your purpose, which can be jobs, can be hobbies, can be volunteering, so many different things. And they can change and they can shift and you can have more than one. And so I really kind of love that in terms of kind of a health space, which is where I'm at, but also this bigger picture of well-being. What does it mean to be well at any point in your life? And it's going to look different.
That's so good. That's so good for so many reasons. I mean, when you talk about your own journey about having an aversion to business, even though probably something in you said I should pay attention to this, and the resistance that you might have experienced in that one space gave you shared understanding that you couldn't have had in another way. As you're talking about purpose and you're talking about what you're learning, that's really a whole person kind of perspective. In one of my other groups, we talked about calling on Monday, and we were talking about vocation is listening to the calling. And if you're doing work, if any of us, you were doing work as a PhD, this is what I should do. It should be in academics. That's what PhDs do. And for you to just be aware enough in yourself, in your own truth, in your own realness, to back to the podcast here, um, to know yourself. I think as you're leading by example with your students and then eventually now with your other clients, that's something that you can't teach. I think you just be it, don't you, from experience?
Yeah, I I've always had this, well, I shouldn't say always. I've been fortunate early on. I did my undergrad up at UND and then I landed back at NDSU. So I've been at all three of these local schools now, so
Mhm,
I can talk to anybody.
mhm,
And up there, I was fortunate to have some really great mentors to help, like you said, Jody, to model what this looks
mhm,
like, to model an authentic being as a professional, as a person, as a colleague. What does that look like to show up and be an authentic person in that in your
mhm,
workspace? And I mean, you like, can you teach it? I feel like you can help students, help clients get to the place where they realize that whatever they're feeling is their authentic self matters, and then they can show up with it. So maybe I'm saying this because I'm an educator and I think, yeah, you can teach components of it, but it's not like a test. It's
right.
more of this mentorship. So I just really value kind of these types of conversations. We're having the things that you do about asking hard questions and helping people realize that they might not be really hard questions, but we have to allow ourselves to
Mm.
wrestle with them and it matters and you can figure it out with the help of
Yeah.
others.
Right. You have the ability to figure it out, and it's going to be a lot more maybe enjoyable if you can find your group, your tribe, your people who see you and hear you and witness you and get you. It seems that that would be a lot more fun in the process.
For sure. And not to get too academic for a second, but kind of social well-being and um, social well-being is so fascinating because three levels of separation of people that you know and spend time with. So we know each other, then the next level would be people you know, but I don't. The next level would be people that that person knows, but neither one of us know, can influence our decisions and our well-being.
Mm,
It's fascinating how extensive our network is and how it will influence us, whether we realize it or not. So when I think more about that, it's kind of figuring out who are my people, and if they're not next to me, I want to go find them or I want to share with, which is the realization I came to is maybe I need to be more vocal about who I am because there
mm,
might be others like me out there that haven't landed in a space yet, which is, to be honest, a bit scary to kind of go out there and be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm gonna do systems thinking, and people go, what does that mean? Oh, I'm gonna do, work with groups like pharmacists, and people go, why would you want to do that? That they're already all established. Because there's so much opportunity that I can see within this structure, because that's how I'm wired to
mm,
see things within strategic alignments and systems, that maybe I just have to do it, and then I'll find some of the other people that want to be doing it too, but didn't have a name for it. When
mhm,
I've done some work with systems thinking in the past and had the opportunity to go over to Oxford a few years ago, which was fantastic. And again, students that I was mentoring and working with, they just didn't have a word for this systems thought process but they were doing it. They just
Mm.
couldn't figure out why their thoughts were a little bit different than the person next to them.
That's You've just identified something in academic terminology that I've been working on for several years in my work as a community builder, a thought leader and a community builder. That's a whole other conversation that we can have in another conversation. I love that you said maybe I needed to get more vocal about who I am, because in my witnessing of you, I'm betting that you are teaching by demonstrating more than you're probably teaching from a book or a process. And the demonstration is, I'm here for you. I care about you, pharmacists, even though you have your systems already down. What if we had an opportunity to connect on a different level? What if our networks could interact with each other on a different level? What if the possibility existed that your mental health and well-being could be enhanced by learning more about, I don't know, snow removal? I'm just looking out my window. I don't want to talk about that right now, but there are possibilities that exist in so many places if we just turn over that rock that was sitting in front of us the whole time.
Absolutely. But it was scary for me. And I'm willing to bet it's scary for others
Yeah.
as well. And coming from a conservative, safe upbringing, it was like, ooh, what will people say if I try this? What will happen if I try it? And it was like, I know the safe answer is to go do some research and put some things out on the shelf. And I tried it, and it wasn't, to your point, it wasn't my calling, it wasn't my purpose. Although love higher ed and I'm there, landed there, I like it, but differently.
Yeah.
And it feels better when to get back to kind of your terminology, it feels real, it feels authentic. Um, but I had to put myself out there in a space where no one else, it didn't look like anybody else.
So have you read much about Brene Brown, or do you know much about her work?
Yeah, I've watched her talks. I've
Yeah.
um seen some of her Dare to Lead
Hmm.
stuff. Absolutely aware. Um, yeah, some of her stuff I can say I'm knowledgeable about.
Well, she's an academic as well. So her work has been from an academic standpoint about shame and vulnerability. And she didn't mean to put herself out there. If you know her story about how I'm just going to speak at this one little thing, and it was a TED Talk, and she didn't realize it was a TED Talk that was going to go all over the world. And then
Right.
she got exposed as I think she would probably call herself an introvert. I mean, she's not out there trying to be, all things, but she's become kind of a beacon for us who are studying vulnerability and authenticity and recognizing that people don't connect with perceived perfection. They connect with authenticity and vulnerability. And for me, that's my mission, my calling is connection.
Okay.
And so recognizing that for you, even you, we both were raised in the same kind of community in a small, rural type North Dakota town, southeast North Dakota. And yeah, there's a certain way we do things around here. We don't talk about ourselves, and we don't admit our fault, our failings, and our but there's no connection in that, right? I mean, if there's a connection, it's a fake one.
Hmm. Yeah, and after a while, you can play the game, you can do the thing, you can survive on that. And then after a while, at least for me, I went, do I want to keep going down this pathway?
Mhm.
And because I couldn't find a landing place that was already there, I went, this is what's next. Creating what I see as a gap and an opportunity to do something. And I've absolutely, I am an introvert. I never thought I was an introvert,
Mhm.
um, because I'm not afraid to teach and get in front of groups and speak and share information. But yet I really like the introspection, and I get
Mhm.
exhausted, by all of
Mhm.
the external. So it is hard for me to go, hey, I did that. Or to call out something, because it's such a process and a collaborative thing for me that
Mhm.
it is very difficult to go, well, now I'm going to be the expert and I'm going to tell everyone I'm the expert. That was hard to get over. I would say I'm not probably never going to get over that feeling,
Yeah.
and learning how to be real and authentic in that space. And again, had some great conversations with some colleagues and mentors more recently too that said that that's going to be hard for you to kind of navigate that space of being a consultant and being in this business world. But as long as you stay authentic, you'll be fine.
Well, because I think the reason maybe for that is that we have this unrealistic expectation of what it means to be an expert in something. And it's almost like they're perfect and they have it all figured out. And if I'm not perfect and don't have it all figured out, then I can't be an expert. It's logic, right? If this, then this. And the truth, that's so not the truth, I think. What I'm recognizing is that there's a lot of shininess with people who are on stages and people who have great websites. And there's a lot of shininess out there that isn't always the truth of them. You're taught I'm making this up. I don't know that this is true, but you're taught in, business school and, how to be a leader school that you have to have it all figured out before you can get on the stage. And that's so not the truth.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that was, I know looking back now that that was a big part for me to go, I don't want to be fake. And
Mhm.
so much in my field of health and well-being, you can call yourself whatever and people will follow you and they'll buy your thing. I'm not selling anything. And
Mhm.
that was another struggle I had with kind of deciding what to do is because there's so many health and wellness things, markets, tools, influencers that look a certain way and sell a certain thing and take whatever the product of the day is. And and it makes me kind of it makes me so frustrated because how do I get away from that part of the industry that is not real?
Mhm.
I still I think I'm going to struggle with that for a while because there'll always be the next tech gadget and the next thing, the next product in the space of health and wellness because it's such a big field that for me really landing on what it is to be authentic, again going back to the sustainable part of it
Mhm.
and helping people figure out what it is for them. There's facts, don't get me wrong. There's biology and physiology and facts to health and well-being that I've got all that information, but what are you ready for? What is your organization looking for? What are you missing? What are your opportunities? And that's the part that I get really excited about because then it can be real and long lasting and not just this thing in the business world that's going to make me some money for a
Mm.
little while and then I'll go to the next thing.
Yeah.
That's again just for me, it just I've struggled with kind of that difference
Yeah, I
for how
get
I
that.
wanted to proceed. Yeah.
So tell me about the organizational work that you do with groups, with companies. What is that like?
Yeah, for sure. So as I was venturing out in this space and landing with all of these what I didn't want to do statements, I finally kind of landed on what is it when I describe this to people. And so my thing is healthy people on purpose. And I kept going back to that, healthy people on purpose. And when I think about that and I think of how I operate and what I can see when I work with groups, it's that systematic approach to, in this case, I'll take a pharmacy, for example. I came from a College of Health Professions most recently, fantastic pharmacy colleagues. That's kind of my first place where I've interacted with groups and working with pharmacists and pharmacy businesses. They are so innovative. They just need kind of that one extra push, a little bit of help from someone who can see, from a little bit of a step back to
Mhm.
see what little thing or maybe big thing, depending on that they could tweak to really have a greater influence on the health of their patients. So I thought a lot about this, and again, like the one-on-one. I started off as a personal trainer and did that one-on-one thing, and I can do it, and it's fine. But again, for me, who am I? What is my authentic skill set? And it's working with larger groups to figure out what is it within their operation, and again, within a health space.
Mm,
So within a health space, so that those people who are working with individual clients, in this case pharmacists, what can we do within your operation and your system to help you, help your organization have healthier people when they leave the door? That's what they want. That's what so many people who come to a health field in any health profession, any caring profession, they want people to feel better after they've interacted with them. Yet our systematic, our structure, our operations of so many of these health spaces, they weren't designed that way, to no fault of the people that are in them. If we look back historically, again, going back to my dissertation, it's just not designed that way. It was designed to help treat people, and it's
mhm,
doing that very well.
mhm,
We treat very well in this country,
mhm.
but we don't help people get healthy. So that's really large vision, is I really want to help organizations figure out how to how to how to have healthy people in the end.
Yeah, that's so good because it's not I can't remember the terminology I'm thinking of right now. It's not a healthcare system. It's a I mean, wellness is different. Um, we don't want to necessarily always have to be retrofitting and going back and healing things that it's like fixing something that's broken. And then at best you put it back to the way it was. And if what I'm hearing you say is if we can work with systems as they're being formulated, they then have the opportunity to make different choices going forward, not bad, good, right, wrong, but different choices. I heard one time somebody said that the difference between illness and wellness is the difference between I and we. And if we can, you said earlier about finding your people or finding your community or getting into these spaces where people are open and have ears to hear what you're sharing, it makes it so much easier than trying to lecture at people who are there not because they want to, but because they have to.
Right, absolutely. And if you think about systems, kind of one of those aha moments for me in this process was when I was reading some work called Heropreneurship. So if you think about entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
they often come into this space, or maybe they're taught in some sort of program that you come into this space of entrepreneurship because you're going to fix somebody's problem with this brand new shiny thing, right? And heropreneurship is kind of opening this up and going, we as a society don't need others to swoop in and save us. What we need are people with innovative ideas to work together for collaboratively. And so that kind of led me to more of the social entrepreneurship side of things and the system side of things, which really helps us to see, because I hear so many people say we need to fix healthcare. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. So,
Yeah.
what we need to think about in systematic ways is that, why is it working the way it is? Are there places of potential shift or places of potential opportunity? Or, could be new, but it also could be some sort of shift. What's the gap? What is keeping it the way that it is working? So maybe there is a way to adjust it, maybe there isn't, but we're not going to flip it on its head necessarily because it's working exactly how it's
Mm.
designed to work.
Such good insight. So who's your ideal client? Who are you looking to connect with right now?
Yeah, I'm looking to connect with organizations within some sort of health or health caregiving space. So right now I'm working with some pharmacy locations, for example. So that is kind of the space that I like to be in. We're working with groups that they want to see more health outcomes. They might not know why or what. Maybe they have a why. Usually they have a why if they're ready to think about it, but they might not know what it looks like.
Mhm.
I would love to kind of work with those groups, those small businesses, larger businesses, healthcare systems that go, I'm just really sick of seeing all of this, like unhealthy, whatever it is, outcomes.
Mm,
I would love to work with those types of groups to help them see how we could look at within their system and what are the opportunities within how they operate,
mm,
and really look at tweaking the operation because they have the knowledge.
mm,
People know. People know what it looks like to be well and to have health promoting behaviors, but how can we change that operation, change their system for success to be on the other side?
I love that. So if you've heard anything that you like, listeners here, that you'd like to know more about, and you want to get a hold of Stephanie, I'm sure she's open to that. So how would they find you, Stephanie?
Absolutely. So the best way to find me if you're on a social media platform is LinkedIn. Stephanie with spelled with an F, not a PH, which trips many people up. So Stephanie Meyer on LinkedIn is where I have kind of a nice space of kind of what I've been up to on there, or my Gmail email, which is STEF as in Frank Meyer 4 at Gmail. So that's the best way to find me right now. One of those two spaces. Reach out. Love to get connected with you. Or at Concordia, if you want to, if you've got a Concordia connection, want to see what's going on there, you can find me at the Concordia College, Moorhead, Minnesota directory.
Perfect. There's so much more we could talk about in so many ways. One thing that I noticed you said a lot, the word realize. You kept saying, once you realize this, you realize this. And it occurred to me that realize can be broken down into seeing the world through real eyes.
Yeah.
And when we see the world through what we know to be real for us, I think the conversations will start those shifts because people feel heard and gotten and seen, as we said earlier. So having those kinds of conversations that cause people to lean forward instead of lean back. Oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm in the imposter of things. It seems that you're shifting in the space of wellness, people's preconceived notions about that. And I think there will be a lot of great conversations that can happen when you're leaning in.
Yeah, wonderful. Oh, this has been wonderful conversation. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say these things out loud as well. You know,
Yeah.
they sometimes live in our heads for a while, so saying them out loud feels really nice.
Oh, completely my pleasure. I completely relate to that because I am a verbal processor, and sometimes I just need to go back and re-listen to some of the things that come out of my mouth too. So thank you as well for the connection. Such
Great.
a
Thank
pleasure.
you so much, Jody, and for everyone listening.
Absolutely. So as always, everybody, reach out to Stephanie if you heard something you like and get real. Thanks, everybody. So I would stop.